3 reasons you should watch Andor on Disney Plus. Coming up soon. Remember to subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Let's do it. What is up, everybody? This is author MB Mooney coming at you on the YouTube channel Great Stories Change the World, where we talk about what makes a story great, and I review stories to see if they are great. And I watched Andor last night. It came out last night, or yesterday. It was Wednesday. Came out episodes 1, 2, and 3. I watched it last night, and let me just tell you a couple things before I get started into the 3 reasons why you should watch it. Number 1, I am a huge Star Wars fan, okay? I am old enough to have seen Star Wars in the theater, okay? I definitely remember seeing Empire Strikes Back in the theater and freaking out like everybody did about you know what at the end and the hand getting cut off and all of that stuff. Saw, Return of the Jedi in the theater. I've seen every one of them in the theater that came out, right? Clone Wars, all of it. And so I'm a huge fan. And let me just tell you about Rogue One. All right, so a lot of people haven't liked these extra movies that they've been doing. A lot of people don't like the sequels. Some people don't like the prequels. I am definitely a hardcore, the original 3, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, huge fan. I like the prequels okay. Not super excited about the sequels, but I did actually like Rogue One. Rogue One quickly became my favorite of the non-original trilogy. So it's, to me, Rogue One is the 4th best Star Wars movie. Now, to some people, that might be sacrilege. I don't know. It's a controversial statement, right? Hot take, right? But it is. Rogue One has become one of my favorites of the Star Wars canon. And there's a lot of different reasons for that we'll get into, because I think they're similar to why I really like Andor. All right, so there's a couple problems with Andor before we get started into the 3 reasons. Number 1, it starts off a little slow. The reason why they put out 3 episodes at once, right? They didn't start like 1 episode and then do the next episode next week, or not 2 episodes. They did 3 episodes because it kind of takes you that long to really get into the inciting incident, to really get into the kind of point of no return for the main character. And in a lot of streaming series, as far as a writer is concerned, they really have to try to do that in the first episode, right? A lot of these streaming shows, they try to get you hooked right in the first episode. And when we're dealing with Andor, and I guess maybe because it's Disney and they're doing the same thing in some of the Marvel shows, where it really kind of takes them a while to get into the groove of what the show is really going to be about. And so it kind of takes these 3 episodes to get there. Now, they're shorter episodes. They're more like 30, 40 minutes instead of like an hour. So it's not quite, it's kind of the same as maybe 2 episodes of a normal sort of hour-long show. So, but it does start a little slow. So some people may not like that. And the next thing that I wanted to kind of address is kind of a negative, is there are a couple characters that aren't very unique, okay? So his friend Bix is very close to kind of the main character in Rogue One, look-wise. And there's 2 guy characters. One is Tim, who's kind of Bix's boyfriend, but then there's this other guy who looks just like him. And so as you get into the 3rd episode, I was like, wait, which guy is that? And that's just kind of bad casting. It's kind of a bad visual. When you're doing TV and movies, like, the visuals are very important. You want to try to have these distinct characters. And I just didn't think they did a great job with that in the main, but a lot of the casting was great. I really enjoyed seeing some of the different characters, and I enjoyed it. So here we go. My 3 reasons why I think you should watch Andor. Number 1, like I just said, Rogue One is one of the 4 best Star Wars movies, and here's why it was great. It was darker. It was more of a mashup of kind of like the Dirty Dozen and some of the old war movies and those kind of things. And so I really think it was a creative look. There were no Jedi. It wasn't some of these things were like they were just kind of relying upon gimmicks of the Star Wars universe. Now, I love Jedi. I love them all. I love that stuff. But this was such an interesting take on the Star Wars universe that I just thought it was very well done. And it was a darker sort of story. The characters are a lot more complicated. They were kind of all like a Han Solo sort of thing, you know. And so I really liked Rogue One. And so this show has a lot of those elements. It has a lot of those same sort of elements, and it's written by one of the same writers. Tony Gilroy is his name. So he's writing and directing this, and he was a big part of Rogue One. So if you liked Rogue One, as I did, maybe you didn't like it as much as me, but if you liked it and you kind of thought that was an interesting take on the Star Wars universe, then you will dig this show. And like I said, it's creative. Now, that leads me to number 2. It's a much more creative look at the Star Wars universe, right? We're not in Tatooine, right? We're getting into the Mandalorian and Boba Fett, and we just keep going back to Tatooine for some unknown reason. And one of the awesome things about like the world building of something like Star Trek or something like especially Star Wars is you have a whole galaxy to explore. There could be just self-contained stories on all these other planets. And so you could kind of keep it within the Star Wars universe. A writer can keep it within the Star Wars universe and yet still explore some new places and new cultures and all of these sort of things. And I think that's a strength of the Star Wars world building and what George Lucas did is writers can come in and they can kind of bring their own things to it. And this show does that, right? We're seeing new places. We're seeing new people groups, right? The Canary, and that's kind of where we see where Andor has come from. We're seeing different things than like there's no stormtroopers, there's no Jedi, there's no stormtroopers, and yet it's still within the same world and they're doing it creatively, and I think they're doing it well. And that's one of the things I loved about Rogue One, and they're continuing to do that here in Andor. So we're seeing new creatures, new planets, and all of that stuff. And I like the complex themes. So that's number 3. So my third reason that I think you should watch Andor is I love the complex themes of this show, right? We have the redemptive arc, which I love. I love the redemptive arc because we kind of begin with Andor being a criminal. He's a criminal and he steals stuff and he's trying to hawk it on the black market. And yet, you know, we already kind of know him and we know he's got a good heart to a certain degree because we kind of see him in the beginning also trying to look for his lost sister. And so we know he's looking for his lost sister. And so that endears him to us, even though he kind of murders some people there in the beginning. And there's some dark things that he's a part of. But he's been traumatized as a young person. He's been abused. He's been, all these sort of things, oppressed by the empire. And yet it's not just the empire. We're seeing this corporate structure coming in. And there's other complex sort of aspects. Like we're getting into police brutality more than just like the empire. And we're seeing more the economic impacts of the empire and all of these sort of things. So I like that they're exploring some of these other parts of the Star Wars universe and the Star Wars storyline sort of thing and doing it in a very creative way. And I like the complex characters, the complex art, that it's not necessarily a simple good versus bad. And I love how in his redemptive arc, I think what we're going to see, we're only 3 episodes in, but what we're going to see with his redemptive arc for Andor is we're going to see him go from a criminal and dealing with kind of that's his rebellion against the empire and the oppression. We're going to start to see more about that there's a greater cause, that his rebellion can actually be a positive thing if he channels that correctly. I think it's a really important sort of message. And I like, again, the redemptive arc. And man, there's even some complex themes, like I said, about police brutality and going into kind of an indigenous area and an oppressed area, and there's some complex themes here, and it really makes you think. So this is what science fiction's about for me, and I love that they're getting more into this with Andor. So you let me know what you think. What do you think of my 3 reasons? What do you think of the show so far? Have you watched it? Let me know what you think about the show. And remember to put that in the comments. I've got a free book for you there in the notes, in the description of the YouTube video. And share it, subscribe, all right? All that good stuff. And until next time, peace out.